Hi, it's Dwyer. It is November the 27th, 2020, right? After the weigh-in, but before the Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. fight. Let's give some last thoughts, but first remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let me just say, I saw the weigh-in. It was spectacular, right? It was spectacular. First, let me just say that Nate Robinson, who's going to be fighting on the undercard, is in great shape, right? I was wondering about him. You know, these celebrity post-career fights, you wonder if guys are taking it seriously. I think everybody's taking it seriously. So Nate Robinson, great shape. Who knows if he can box? Roy Jones looked in pretty good shape. Weighed 210. Mike Tyson had no fat on him. No fat. Looked in great shape. Weighed 220. Right? 220. Few things to look at for this fight. Right? Last minute thoughts. Both guys look to be in pretty good shape. Tyson looks to be in great shape. Right? The first thing is that, in my opinion, this is going to open the door toward more fights like this. Understand, heavyweights age more slowly as it is. If you have a big punch, understand, power is the last to go. You can lose some reflexes, you can lose some stamina. The rounds are only 2-minute rounds. The fight is only an 8-round fight. The format is going to help you with your stamina. Also, the fact that you're fighting another senior citizen is going to help you with your stamina. So in the studio, they had the perfect person. Former cruiserweight champion, undisputed, by the way, at cruiserweight. Former heavyweight champion, David Haye. A guy who, like Tyson, has hand speed and has power. Understand, too, what the time away from the ring does for you. Those nagging injuries that can never really heal because you're having fight after fight, now suddenly your body's had a several-year stretch to heal. So David Haye was being questioned, and he sounded like he wanted to come back. Well, let's talk about this fight. As I said in an earlier video, I feel Mike Tyson views himself as a heavyweight when they looked at each other. They looked about the same size, right? But understand, if this fight were at light heavyweight, Roy Jones would be the favorite. I'd take Roy Jones. This fight's at heavyweight. Mike Tyson sees himself as a heavyweight, has the experience, longer than one fight at heavyweight, has been hit by heavyweights, right? I think Mike Tyson is the person who has the decided experience and mental edge here. Now, I've heard it said that George Foreman was out of the ring about 10 years, right? By the way, Foreman, in his 50s, were he Roy Jones's age, he would give Tyson all he could handle because Foreman has the punch, Foreman has the jab. Foreman has the size and knows how to use it, right? Leans on a smaller fighter and stuff like that. Foreman also knows how to clinch. Well, let me just say, Roy Jones doesn't have the size. I know Tyson's been out of the ring for 15 years, right? 1.5 times what George Foreman was out of the ring. And I know people are saying, look, Roy Jones fought in 2018. Roy Jones is the guy who's kept himself in fighting shape. Roy Jones is the guy who's kept his reflexes sharp. Right? Roy Jones is the guy who was recently fighting 3-minute rounds. Now these are 2-minute rounds. Right? Roy is the guy who'll be better prepared. Plus, Roy is younger. Let's be real here, too. I know the teenagers and people in their 20s, these are just two old guys. They can't tell the difference. These two guys are from different eras. The 1980s were not the 1990s, right? Much more chaotic, right? Pre-Berlin Wall coming down. In 1988, Mike Tyson unifies the heavyweight title by beating Michael Spinks. That's the same year that Roy Jones gets jobbed at the Olympics. Right? Understand, prime Tyson is 1980s Tyson. We all know he peaked early in his career, has not been the same since. The Tyson who fights through the 1990s is not Mike Tyson. Right? So I want people to understand, back in the 80s, if you saw someone with a cell phone, which was highly unusual, the person was carrying a briefcase, right? That was really the phone console. That's a different time, right? That's Ice-T, 6 in the morning, right? That's the Boys in the Hood when NWA was unknown. That's not the 90s. It's not Tony, whatever, right? That's not the 90s. These two guys were great at different times. They're different eras. They both own their era. But it's different eras. Now, some things to look out for, right? The first is going to be the referee. Roy Jones does have a tremendous left hook, but understand, Roy Jones needs space to throw it. Jones is a guy who needs space. Mike Tyson is a guy who does not. Tyson not only hit hard, he threw extremely short punches. Right? You cannot have the ref from the Joseph Parker-Anthony Joshua fight do this fight. In other words, you need a ref who's going to watch Tyson get inside, right? Understand, a big man. I know they look the same size. Tyson's 220, not 210. Tyson's a heavyweight pedigree. Not a middleweight, super heavyweight, light heavyweight pedigree. So Tyson's going to want to come inside. He's going to want to get inside of Roy Jones's punches. If the ref lets him do so, Tyson has a chance to win this fight by stoppage. Right? Understand, think back to the Joe Calzaghe, Roy Jones Jr. fight. Right? Calzaghe gets inside on Jones. Jones is backed up against the ropes where he has problems. You remember the Dennis Lebedev fight? Where is Jones when he gets dropped by Antonio Tarver in their rematch? He's over by the ropes. Right? Jones over by the ropes is not Roy Jones in the middle of the ring. Right? So, is the ref going to let Tyson get inside? That's a big question. If the answer is yes, if in this exhibition the ref is not going to be too parental and is actually going to let the guys have it out, that favors Tyson. Right? What I also want people to do, and I know this is heresy, I know I sound like a loon, let the chips fall where they may. But what I want them to do, even the police are upset with this part of the video, but what I want people to do is to look at Tyson's hand speed. Now, Foreman, in an interview, said that he was wondering how Mike Tyson was going to deal with Roy Jones's hand speed. Jones has fast hands from distance. Right? Mike Tyson has fast hands. The reason it's important is I don't think Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, or Anthony Joshua can match Tyson in hand speed. I'm not saying Tyson is the Tyson of 1988. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is Tyson is coming back at a time when the big three in the heavyweight division are all big and clunky. Right? You don't have a lot of guys with hand speed at heavyweight outside of Andy Ruiz. And the problem with Andy is Andy doesn't move like Mike Tyson. If Tyson comes in, flashes his hands, and they're still fast, right? They're still fast. And I believe they will be fast. YouTube right now has several workout videos of Mike Tyson. And you notice the hand speed on each of the videos. Right? If Tyson comes in, has the hand speed, I'm telling you, he's going to have the power. Because power is the last to go. Then in my opinion, in this format, 2-minute rounds that would give an older fighter an opportunity to pace himself. Right? 2-minute rounds. Only 8 rounds. Where again, a Mike Tyson who fades against Kevin McBride, against Danny Williams, doesn't have to worry about the extra minute around or the extra rounds in the fight. Right? If Tyson comes out, has the hand speed, has the power, is able to get inside on Roy, dodge the left hook, jump on Roy, right? Work his body. Look at the Tyson-Brian Nielsen fight. Look at the Tyson-Frank Bruno fight. If Tyson can get inside, flash hand speed, still have the series of punches he had back then, very short hooks, uppercut, if he can fight low. Understand, we have to ask the question, because when these guys are younger, okay, sure, the guy can bend at the waist, he can bend at the knees. When you get older, that's not a given. Right? Guys watching this video in their 50s, though, that's not a given. If Tyson can fight low, then I'm just telling you, in this format, given the problems Tyson Fury has had with smaller fighters, given the problems Fury recently had with Otto Wallin, who looked like the better athlete, given the low volume of Deontay Wilder, given Deontay Wilder's state of mind, he's made some comments recently that were a bit out there, to me at least. Given the fact that Anthony Joshua couldn't handle Andy Ruiz's hand speed. Never handles Andy Ruiz's hand speed. In the rematch, his solution was to move out of the pocket, wasn't it? Then, in my opinion, Mike Tyson, against the top of the heavyweight division, would have a chance to have his moments in an exhibition set up in this format. Right? Understand, this fight is significant. If Tyson comes out, the format favors punchers too. Right? If Tyson comes out and can just land a couple of heavy shots every round, if he staggers Roy Jones, Jones is not going to have enough time in a 2-minute round to then show that he's the better boxer, right? Move around the ring. You know how you see a fight where a guy gets staggered in a round, but he's the better boxer. He gets on his toes. He starts out boxing the other guy. You say, wow, he came back. Here, you don't have time to come back. Tyson hits you with a shot 45 seconds into the round. What are you going to do in the last 75 seconds of the round to convince people that you've offset that shot? Right? Let me say this too. There could well be a stoppage in this fight. People are acting like it's going to go 8 rounds. If you have a parental type referee, if everyone's on pins and needles, if one of these guys looks hurt, looks shaken, leans on the ropes, the ref might feel that he's preventing elder abuse by jumping in and stopping the fight. Given Roy Jones's chin problems, folks, I want people to look at Roy Jones on the canvas against Glenn Johnson. If you think that's bad, Look at Roy Jones on the canvas against Denis Lebedev. Roy Jones has been a victim of some brutal KOs. Right? There's an open question on Roy Jones's chin. Now, Mike Tyson has been badly knocked down, the Buster Douglas fight, but he hasn't looked remotely as bad as Roy Jones did in the Glenn Johnson fight, where they're giving Roy smelling salts, or in the Denis Lebedev fight, where I was seriously concerned about whether Roy was going to be able to get off the canvas. So, the final thing is to look at how Mike Tyson moves. Right? If he's able to just slip inside, and he needs to slip inside at an angle where he's not there getting hit by Roy Jones combinations from distance, where he's not vulnerable to Roy Jones's hand speed. In other words, Tyson has to get low. He has to come in a side door. Think the Marvis Frazier fight. We are going back to the 1980s. If Tyson's able to move well, particularly in the first 3 rounds, because I believe in momentum scoring, right? If Tyson exceeds expectations early in the fight, then as this fight continues, some judges might get caught up in nostalgia and start rubber stamping rounds on their scorecard. If Tyson, in sum, looks like Mike Tyson, this fight, whether or not it does well on pay-per-view, if it does well the morning after, online, in the papers, with people talking on Zoom, on Google Meet, on Microsoft Teams, if this fight generates a buzz, then I believe it's going to open the door to a genre, right? Fighters with debts to repay, right? Henry Maskey, Virgil Hill, look up that series of fights, right? Guys who lost, they're retired, it just doesn't sit well with them, right? Some older fighters are going to want to get back into the ring, right? I'm sure David Haye would love the opportunity to have a fight against Tony Bellew where both of his legs are healthy, right? Where he's not dealing with a bad injury that has him on one leg as it is, right? If this fight artistically delivers, it's going to open the door to an entire genre, right? More older fights. 8 rounds, 2-minute rounds. We can call this the senior citizen rules for boxing, right? More importantly, if Mike Tyson shows flashes of being Mike Tyson, given that Tyson Fury's a slow starter, given that Anthony Joshua didn't look that adept against not just Andy Ruiz, but Alexander Povetkin while that fight lasted, this is going to open the door to a huge payday for one of the current fighters to fight Tyson in this format, right? If Roy Jones wins, I don't think you get the same buzz, right? Maybe you get the rematch of Roy Jones against Denis Lebedev in this format. But understand, if Tyson wins and does so dramatically, that's going to open the door. You know, let me just say too, let's say you're advising one of these heavyweights. Let's say you're advising Deontay Wilder, who's had some words about Mike Tyson, right? Wilder, of course, wants to prove he's an all-time great. If you're advising Wilder, do you want him in the ring at this point with Tyson Fury again? Did that last fight leave you with the idea that, you know, Wilder could beat Tyson Fury? Or are you going to have him in the ring against a guy who, at least on paper, is in his mid-50s, right? Has had one fight. This is the first fight in 15 years. One fight in the last 15 years, right? Who hasn't fought Fury and the other guys on Wilder's resume, the current heavyweights. I think some of these younger guys would take the bait, right? This is prize fighting. You know, the payday's always good, right? I think one of these guys would take the bait to fight a living legend. If that legend legitimizes himself today by beating Roy Jones in the upcoming fight this weekend. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Look at the ref. Is the ref going to allow inside fighting? Is Tyson able to get inside? Does Tyson still have the hand speed? Right? Is Tyson able to hurt Roy, pin him on the ropes like Joe Calzaghe did? Understand, Calzaghe's nickname was Joe Cal Slappy. If Mike Tyson gets you on the ropes, he's not slapping you, folks. He's punching you. Right? If it all lines up and this fight has you thinking about it the day after, expect a lot of heavyweights to put the gloves back on, to say, hey, fight me next. More importantly, expect some current fighters to say, fight me next. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I look forward to your comments. Thanks for stopping by.